We do have a pretty full agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. And as we work through it, just keep in mind that we do have a long agenda. So if there are decision points that we need to make, let's get to those and see what we can do. So I think several of these core topics were from Gabriel, so I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Yeah, sure. So the first one is something that I brought it to the TST last week regarding whether the Helm charts should work out of the box. Because there was a couple like an issue that user is trying to use the Helm charts directly without using OnRamp or any other tool, just directly install them from Helm. And of course, they don't necessarily work because of the default configurations are not appropriate to be able to deploy the out of the box. Such as, for example, the UPF gets the best UPF Helm chart is for the UPF to be deployed in DPDK mode. And of course, to be able to deploy in DPDK mode, resources need to be available, SRIOV devices need to be configured beforehand, they can actually be used. And things like that. So that's kind of what I wanted to get some insight on that regards, because whether somebody wants to use the Helm charts out of the box, they still need to configure certain parameters, like, for example, the interface that they're going to be attached. Those resources, for example, if we deployed in AF packet mode, so the MAC VLAN to what interface is going to be attached. And that needs to be passed because that's going to change from system to system, right?
So almost by definition, it seems that out of the box is not achievable, because you do have to know enough to edit.
Right. Yeah, so there are a couple things that need to be set. But we could describe those things in a README file inside the Helm charts, for example.
Sure.
If we want to do that, right? So it is doable, but to say, okay, just use these Helm charts, makes no changes, and deploy the core network is not going to be doable, right? So I was kind of looking into the 5G core values from the on-ramp. And of course, there are a few variables like the AMF or SCTP-LB IP address that is exposed for GNODBs to connect. So that's something that needs to be configured, right? So it needs to be set. And then again, the interfaces to which the UPF interfaces are going to be attached to. And then I think it's one or two more things that need to be indicated before the deployment actually happens.
So my reaction is I kind of agree with something that happened on a side channel where AJ said the default should be the simplest case, not a more complicated one. That makes sense to me. And it does make sense that if you have been given instructions that you need to change X, Y, and Z, and you're going to get a very basic install, I think that's, it seems perfectly good thing to do. My main concern is that going to be sufficient to keep people happy? Well, no, they're always going to want to do something different, but that we not try to solve that problem because it's impossible to solve without jumping into something more complicated.
Right. Yeah. So from that perspective, basically what I mentioned to the in the issue, basically I mentioned to these two users because there was one user who opened the issue and another one kind of like following up the issue because I think that person also was interested in doing the same thing. I mentioned, this is what I see. Everything gets deployed. The NRF doesn't, and the UPF doesn't. The NRF is something related to connection to Mongo. The B, I believe, is some connectivity reject that is not getting, that's what it just gets in crash loopback mode. And the UPF, of course, is not going to start because by default, it tries to deploy in DPDK mode. So I recommend them, say, look into the 5G values from the on-ramp, and then you can just apply those values to your local setup. So, but again, if we want to kind of have this enable it kind of out of the box, so we could do that, but that's where kind of some kind of history of especially the best UPF Helm chart.
Could I interject and ask a question about the issue that was raised in GitHub? Do you have a sense if these were sophisticated users, or did they just stumble into this and they really should have been using OnRamp because they really didn't know what they were doing? I just am curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Based on what I saw, it seems that they look like knowledgeable of what
Okay.
they were trying to do. At least, there was not much interaction, but at least I asked them to give me some information, and they just gave me that information. So without like further questions, so how can I do that,
Yeah. Okay,
or things like
good.
that. So
That's good. So
it
there will
seemed
be
like they were
sophisticated
not.
users that follow that path, and just it probably will only take minimal guidance and they'll be off and running.
Mm-hmm. So then let's say we agreed on modifying the UPF Helm chart to kind of use AF packing mode the simplest way as possible, and then add some kind of README file to say what are the minimum things that need to be changed to be up and running.
Yeah,
Or
that sounds fine to me.
what's
AJ, did you have thoughts?
the input?
So your question is that maybe can you rephrase the question again one more time, Gabriel?
Oh, whether we want to update the Helm charts to make people be able to deploy or use the Helm charts out of the box, having this additional information that there are 2-3 parameters that they need to change, because this information in the Helm charts README file that they need to change as per the setup.
I would say as long as our Helm charts and the default on-ramp file is good enough, right? So what would we expect is that somebody wants to do the Helm install on their own. They should probably just take the default values YAML from the on-ramp and start it, right? That's what we can say, so that it will come up as a basic example. And if further, if they want to go ahead and any advanced things, then of course we will need to provide them some details, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm okay if you want, but the thing is that if you go and update the Helm charts, we don't know who else is using it, and we'll end up in breaking their use cases. So
well, yeah,
right,
but it's going to break something if the whoever is using is going to update or is going to move to a newer version of the Helm charts. Otherwise, right. If they're still using an old version, that is fine. So if I understand correctly, then what you are suggesting is, instead of kind of modifying the Helm charts, just adding a README file in the Helm charts and basically kind of put the values that need to be updated to be able to deploy the Helm charts like kind of out of the box, but basically applying those changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be the least disruptive thing to do. Could I ask that you also just have a reference to OnRamp and maybe a little note that says, if you get in over, not in these words, but basically, if this doesn't make sense to you, jump over to OnRamp and it'll help you.
Okay, yeah, so that's kind of like, on the issue, that's what I point to the user, say, look, use these values from OnRamp, and that's going to be helping you to kind of deploy what you need. But yeah, so sure, I can do that in a README file.
Okay, sounds like you got a plan.
Okay, perfect. So that's kind of one, and then some kind of update. We have been, since the release that we did on like March, we have been trying to remove these tiny repositories, consolidate on some larger repository, like a auxiliary repository. And I was kind of looking into the repos one more time, and I noticed that this common consumer data test was only used by the Genome vSIM. But when looking into the Genome vSIM itself, it had like 6 or 7 functions using that, but basically those functions were not being used. So basically what we did is we just removed those functions from there because they were not used anymore anyway. And what I did is I archived these common consumer data test. So try to consolidate in as fewer repos as possible. So we have, without having those addition, to maintain these other repositories that actually are not adding any value. That's something like we did with Ajay, I think, like Friday or over the weekend, something like that. The other thing is that Golang CI lint. I was reviewing one PR, I think last week or 2 weeks ago from the Canonical team. And I was providing some feedback saying, typical like Go idiomatic stuff is any log shouldn't start with a capitalized letter, right? So everything should be lowercase letter. So I provided that feedback to the user, and of course he, which makes sense, he complained, say, but the Golang CI doesn't kind of tell me anything about that, and everything goes fine. I say, yeah. So he was right. The Golang CI lint wasn't reporting that issue, but of course I knew that, and that's what I asked him to kind of change that. So I got curious on better understand this Golang CI lint. So I took one repository like the AMF repo, and I run the Golang CI lint. Of course, he didn't find anything, and then I run the static check by itself, and then start finding several issues in there, right? So from that perspective, it's supposed to be that Golang CI lint is an umbrella linter for multiple checks, and one of those includes this static check. But I don't really understand why Golang CI lint doesn't detect what a static check by itself detects, even though static check is enabled in the Golang CI lint. So I wanted to get
Gabriel, there can be a configuration file in the directory that's controlling what Golang CI lint does. So
yeah,
it's like
yeah, I did verify. I did made a few changes to kind of try to see whether I am able to kind of replicate what I'm getting directly from the static check by using Golang CI. But I made a few changes in the Golang CI YAML file, but I couldn't replicate that. So that's what I was kind of trying to figure out, whether get some insight from the team, whether do we want to create another GitHub action just for a static check, or maybe other linters that are not necessarily being fully covered by Golang CI lint, or should we let it go, or or as Sean suggested, maybe somebody else can take a look into the Golang CI lint YAML file to see whether I missed something or I overlooked something, and see whether we can kind of replicate that part.
There are comparable configuration files in lots of other repos. Like I know the Rock had an honest config. They all have those configuration files. So I mean, for the repo you're looking at, it might be worth comparing with something like those.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna try any specific repo that you think that is kind of like
Say
base reference.
Honest config, I would think.
Honest config. Okay.
And also the version of Golang CI lint is always something that has sort of needed maintenance as well. So maybe just I guess you specify the version in the GitHub action, do you?
Yep.
Or
yeah. I'm using kind of the latest. So
right. Okay.
And
yeah.
also I did I did compare that having in my local machine, local setup, just running Golang CI lint, so no GitHub action involved, just running Golang CI lint and running static check. So I just compare the two of those directly on the machine, and I still see this kind of difference on output.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I mean, there are a few guys on our side who have experience with it, and maybe I can ask them. If you just ping me,
okay,
Gabriel, with the details of which repo you're looking at here.
Absolutely. Okay,
I can forward it.
Sure.
Nice.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Yeah. So the other kind of item is kind of a link to the previous one. So when I was kind of going through this, looking into the Golang CI lint and static check, I noticed that there was some capital letters in these log rules that we're using for logging currently, and those were not kind of catched by either one, either Golang CI lint or static check. And then so I start kind of digging a little bit deeper, and based on the last commit for log rules, it's from June 23. There's no more commit, so not much activity overall. So I don't know whether the project is still active or no one is actually actively maintaining it or what's happening. So I started exploring some other possible login alternatives. And it seems like this SAP would be a good alternative. So at least their description say that it's a blazing fast login thing. So I wanted to see what your thoughts are, and this is an additional effort that could be done. And also if there is somebody who can help towards this update.
On the Zap side of things, I think for things we do inside Intel, we moved to Zap, and I think we've had a good experience with it. Scott, maybe you know more about that.
Yeah, so Zap, this is the thing that Jordan and Adib wrapped their own logger framework around it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that we can talk about that other than that Zap seemed to be a good foundation for that.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't depending on loggers anyway. Yes, I think we depend on Zap.
Okay. Okay, I mean, it would be good. Again, it seems like this logos is not necessarily very active, so it would be good. And this other SAP seems to be like fast login tool. It would be great if we can, move into that, and if there is somebody that can help towards this effort, that would be great. Yeah, and also, we need to double check whether this Golang CI link catches issues or that are kind of inside the SAP logger as well. What else? Yeah, the other thing is that for now, we are not actually, as part of the GitHub Actions, we are not running an end-to-end test. Basically, either, for example, deploy a on-ramp and run this test with vSim, making sure that all the different profiles pass, a PR and things like that. We don't have that enabled at the moment because we need the resulting PR needs to create a new image that we need to use inside the Kubernetes cluster if we deploy this either as a GitHub action or whether we create a Jenkins job. We need to create this image, and for that we need some type of either user that we can push, for example, these images to Docker Hub, and these kind of temporary images to Docker Hub. And this is kind of partially what I was kind of discussing with Daf on these regards to see what would be a good way to move forward on this. And I'm bringing this up because I was kind of going back and forth on a peer review that I have with another member of the Canonical team in regards to the SMF, which makes sense because basically they were making the changes. I was reviewing the changes, of course, and I always test any change with this end-to-end to make sure that nothing breaks. And of course, it was breaking, and then go back saying, this is not working. And then he used to make more changes. And by the way, Canonical doesn't use the on-ramp. They actually use their own way of deploying the SD core. So we went this back and forth, and the suggestion was, it would be good to have this end-to-end test automatically as part of the validation. So we don't have to go through this back and forth, and which makes a lot of sense, right? But yeah, this is one of the things that we need to do is see a way of how we can push these images. I was thinking Docker Hub, but it may be also a good alternative to push to the registries that we have, the Aether registry or somewhere. But the point is to gonna be able to pull these images, this new query image based on this PR to run the tests.
So this is a great issue. I mean, an important issue, but it's a complicated. It's not going to be an easy one. There's trade-offs in how much testing you do as part of a GitHub action on a pull request. you're always going to depend on a certain amount of good faith testing on the part of the developer, I think. But that's just all to say. I wonder if maybe working with Canonical, we could put together, or you could put together, we could discuss a proposal as to how to go about this, because you could engage some of the integration tests that exist, but again, that would be kind of heavyweight. Maybe what I'm saying is this is not an easy. It's a good discussion topic, but it's not an easy to resolve topic.
Well, so far, based on what we have been doing internally and based on what I have seen in the GitHub actions, so there is an action to kind of deploy a Kubernetes cluster, so that makes things easier. And what we did internally here as part of one project last year is we used the reference Ether in a box, but we cannot disable everything that is related to the deployment of the Kubernetes cluster, because we already had this multi-host Kubernetes cluster deploy. And then also I only use Ether in a box to do everything that has to do with the Helm charts to deploy the SD core with the specific parameters that it could have been done, using Helm install directly, but since we have a few people working on this, it was easy to say, just use the command make, 5G.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've got an extremely minimal configuration. It's exactly what you want to do a test of some new function.
Yeah. So from that perspective, I was thinking I could take a path, something like that. But again, the only pending thing for that could be doable would be, again, to see how we can actually push this image, this newly created image based on this change somewhere, such that we can just use that image as a reference point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's something that I would like to get either some help probably from DAF, or see how we can actually, do this to be able to kind of enable this option for the testing, right? One more thing. So I don't take that much of the time. So I think several meetings ago, I mentioned about these OMEC CNI and OMEC pod init repositories that are currently in Gerrit. So we are not doing any maintenance of that. So we have been using the same version, I think is 1.0.0 from 2020. And I was thinking, since we are kind of relying on these two components on the SD core, the most appropriate way would be to bring those two components into the OMEC project organization in GitHub and create the appropriate GitHub actions to maintain them up to date. So I wanted to see what are your inputs, and if everybody agrees, whether DAF can help us kind of setting up these empty repos in GitHub to move these two components there.
No objection. Seems like the right thing to do.
We should move. Yeah.
So DAF's in the call. So do you mind to kind of help me creating these two empty repositories for these two components?
Just to make sure they're in the Onos Garrett right now? Which Garrett?
OMEC Garrett. No, I'm sorry. Never mind.
These OMEC CNI, they are in Gerrit. Somewhere here. Open Core Gerrit.
Okay, Open Core. All right.
Yeah, Open Core. Both of them are in the Open Core.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for now, probably I have a couple more things, but maybe we can discuss that next time. So I don't know who put the scalability there.
I did. So I've got
Okay.
I've got two other topics I thought best fit under the core. One of them, which I don't know if there's really anything more to say than just to make sure everyone's aware that Bala is working on with AJ on backporting all of the scalability enhancements to the core. And there's a pretty sizable PR that's in being built out in progress. Anything else to say about that, Bala?
No, I think I would like to just mention that I'm just updating my code with the latest codes for all the repos of the SD code that we have for AMF and SMF. So yeah, it just needs a little bit more time. But yeah, I'm updating the code as well as incorporating my changes.
Yeah, so this isn't quite at a PR stage yet. He's integrating into his code, and then we'll turn it into a PR.
Yep.
And the last item is in the process of having Iowa State bringing up the OAI blueprint. They discovered, and we discovered that the Grafana has fallen out of date. It's not displaying the metrics being pulled from metric funk, and we're still trying to track down what that is, but just an FYI that Grafana is not working quite right now. Since I just raised it, AJ, do you know anything else about that?
So yeah, like I think Badri is there in today's call. Yeah, I think he's there. Yeah, I can. Yeah, Badri, I think you remember we had some default dashboard, right? I'm not sure if that is moved to on-ramp or not. Do you know?
Maybe not.
Yeah, so Larry, there was a default dashboard in the Aether in a box. So when we used to deploy the 5G core, those dashboard were used to get published into the Grafana, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
But now
there's,
since
there's a dashboard, there's dashboards in OnRamp, and they were taken from Aether in a box originally.
I see. Okay.
And then they were updated a couple of times, but it sounds like maybe it fell out of date.
I think I can check. There is someone from community, right, who's working on it. Like while debugging that, I think we should get it fixed.
Okay, good. It sounds like it'll be a pretty straightforward thing to do.
Yeah.
What are those? Yeah, I forget what they're called. The dashboard spec has fallen out of date.
Yeah, I think it's JSON file or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
The dashboard is based on JSON.
Yeah. Okay. I know what it is now. Thanks. On-ramp, just 2.1. There is now an OAI blueprint, so you can build, pull in software-defined RAN from OAI and run it against the Aether core and test it either with the simulated UE or with an actual live UE. And it's also, it exists. You can go read about it and try it yourself. And the folks from Iowa State have worked through it and gotten it running as well on their hardware. So that was really helpful to have an outside interest looking at it and telling us what was and wasn't working. And then there's a PR currently being reviewed to add some variables that are used to set Kubernetes resources. And I think that's pretty close to being finished up. Anyone else have anything else on OnRamp I'm forgetting? Okay.
Larry,
Yeah.
sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I'm Joshua from Iowa State. So I have been able, I think as Larry already mentioned, I have been able to deploy using the on-ramp, the SD core, and then the OEI on two different servers, and also the OEI UE as well. But one thing that I want to inquire, because after I was able to get the PDU session established between the UE and then the core, somehow I'm not able to ping the core IP, the 192.168.250.1. So I was just wondering if there are any routes that I need to kind of like add to the UE to be able to ping that. I mean, just based on the blueprint that you have right now.
Did you try to ping off out into the internet?
Internet. No.
It should have internet connectivity. It should be when the core is installed, there are enough routes set up and so on, so that you should be able to reach the external internet.
Okay. Okay. Let me try that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just ping 8888 and see if it works.
Okay.
Just
okay,
to clarify, I think just to clarify, the way I understood his question is that Joshua, you are trying to ping the one of the UPF IP address from the OAI server, right? And to do that, definitely you need some route on the OAI server, because the 192.168, the 250 network is a little bit internal network. OAI
But-
should be aware of that.
Yeah,
Right.
but the OAI blueprint, on-ramp blueprint sets all of those routes up for you.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, sure. So on the, I think, yeah, on the Gnode B, all those routes are set. So I'm able to ping UPF and everything there. But the setup is such that I have 3 servers, right? So one server is where the UE is running somewhere in the field. And then the 2 servers are co-located at the same location, which one is running the SD core and then one is the OAI Gnode B. So from Gnode B to the core, I'm able to ping everything. But I was just saying that on the UE server in the field or somewhere in the farm, like 650 meters from the Gnode B, after the PDU session is established, I wasn't able to ping the UPF. But yeah, I'll try to ping
Okay,
the
so that's, okay, now I understand. That should work. And because there is a NAT setup, so it should work. But if you follow the packet trace suggestion, I think you can see the ping go out and it's not coming all the way back if you did all that sequence of traces, packet captures. So
yeah.
maybe we can take this offline and work through debugging it, but it should work.
Okay, sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll try your suggestion. I'll let you know on Slack. Thank you.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, DAF.
Yeah, just quick update on, items here. Jira site, the team had approved the test site and just shift the same functionality to production. I'll be taking care of that this week. I expect by the end of tomorrow. Shouldn't be much of an issue. It's fairly straightforward. As anticipated, site will be accessed by lf-ether.atlassian.net and whatever other aliases we decide, but that's its primary location. Let me know if there are other sites you want.
Well, I mean, can we add Jira.ether
Yeah, tell me everything.
project.org? Oops. Okay,
Initial accounts will be anybody that has ever been inside, on the invite or participant list of any TSC in the last 6 months. Please file a ticket if there's anybody else you want to set up accounts. And we do want to discuss, ask the team to consider what should be protocol for adding new users and new accounts. Is it simply anybody who asks? Does somebody on TSC need to approve? Do you want to have somebody who gates it? You tell me.
okay. No.
No reason to discuss now. Just think about it, and I can throw up a discussion on a Slack channel later if we want.
Okay,
Heads up on Confluence. We are also shifting Confluence to a cloud. We have a Confluence site today that is on a hosted server that needs to be moved to the cloud. There's a migration tool to do it easily and without any data loss. I'll be testing that this week. Provided everything goes well, I'll be asking the team to review any specific issues they're concerned about. And then when TSC approves, I'll do the full production migration. When we do the production migration, it'll be about 4 hours downtime, but other than that, it should be transparent to you other than, relinking DNS sites. Any questions on Confluence?
I just put a note on your question, and yeah, the Ether Dev is the largest coverage, so that's the right place to make announcements like this.
Okay, I shall so do that. So that's Jira and Confluence and shifting to cloud. Before I go on, any questions or clarity requests?
Nope.
All right. Jenkins, all quick start jobs are now dynamic. All jobs end in EC2 for now. We'll shift and get rid of the ones otherwise, but all the old jobs have been disabled. All the new jobs are EC2 currently. On 2004, 2 succeed and 4 fail. The 4 that fail seem to be intermittent. They were intermittent when they were static. The intermittency seems to be higher when they're dynamic, and that suggests to me race conditions. So I need to figure out why they're happening. 2204.
Quick question, are failures being reported to the Jenkins Slack channel?
I'm not sure. I'll check on that.
Yeah, do just, that makes it, anyone can subscribe to them. It makes it easier to follow up
Yeah.
how flaky things get.
Thank you. Need to build 2404 versions of all the 2204 jobs. I'll put that together. I may not have time to investigate any falling out failures, but at least they'll be in this queue and we'll see them. I assume that is desired. Anybody disagree?
Yeah, we definitely want to do that, but no one's tested it, so I don't know if it's going to be trivial or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just set the jobs up and we'll worry about how hard it is to make it work after we see.
Yep, thanks.
Doobie-doobie-doo. The 2 server jobs are still static. I'm looking at moving them to dynamic over the next 2 weeks and want to be done with that by the end of the month, primarily just for cost savings. Currently there are 4 jobs running. Are they all still desired?
Yes, they are. I disabled everything that wasn't, so.
Okay.
It's a funky name, but non-dockerized is the version of the ransom test that we do want to run.
Okay. Good enough. I'll do those shifts. DNS for docs. I got stopped there on just getting the configuration right for all the redirections. Just need some time. Hopefully finish that up by the end of the week. It's just server configuration stuff, and I didn't get time to really resolve everything.
Yeah, so the cert, I saw the cert issue. Do you know how to deal with that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep. We've got a full cert pod. The server that's hosting this has somewhere around 15 sites. So you just need to add to it and clean up the ones that are no longer there.
All right.
And that's what I have. Any questions or issues that I should be aware of otherwise?
Nothing off the top of my head. Anybody else? All right, well,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And that moved quickly, so we got through everything else. Are there any other topics, issues? So just to follow up a couple action items, is there someone specifically, AJ, that I didn't quite catch that knows about the metric dashboard that I should be talking to?
Which one? You're saying the Grafana one?
I wasn't quite clear if you were trying to include someone else in in when you were talking about the dashboard update.
Yeah, I think it's Joshua. I think he.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. He's the one who's trying out. Yeah.
And what was the other one? Shoot, I had another one in my mind. Now I've lost it. Oh, Joshua, just take it offline and walk through everything that needs to happen to try to get the ping off site. And we can just take that one offline then. Anything else? I'm sorry to hold you a little longer, but I just remembered that last week, which I wasn't at, there was a topic on SD-RAN, and there was a question in here. Does anybody know what that is about? I think it had to do with whether we treat micro-ONOS as part of SD-RAN or we treat it as a dependency. Did I capture that right, or does anyone have that context?
Last time he was talking about splitting the SD-RAN basically in a new kind of organization, so they are independent, because at the moment the repositories, let's say rock and rig, they have common dependencies. So a change on the rig on one of these common repositories for the rig is also gonna affect the rock.
Okay.
That's kind of what I understood from that perspective, and that's kind of like the part, the option 1 and option 2, and then based on that, you know, decide for the next release as
Got it.
far as I remember.
Yeah, it's option 2 sounds right, but I'll pick that up with Wuzhang and see if we can
Mhm.
resolve it. All right. Sorry about that diversion. And anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you again next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.